The house was quiet, almost too quiet for Evelyn. At 62, she had grown used to the silence that followed her after her children had built their own lives. The walls had once carried the noise of slamming doors, teenage laughter, and the sound of her late husband's voice calling everyone to dinner. Now they only carried echoes. Most days, Evelyn filled the stillness with small comforts: the hum of the kettle, the radio playing faintly in the background, the smell of soup simmering on the stove. But when her daughter Claire and her family came to stay, everything felt alive again. That weekend was one of those rare visits. The air was brighter, filled with footsteps and voices, with Michael, her 17-year-old grandson, rushing up and down the hallways. She loved watching him, taller now, his shoulders broader, his voice deeper than she remembered. He was not a boy anymore, though she still saw shadows of the child he once was. The little boy who clung to her hand at the zoo, who used to fall asleep with picture books spread across his lap. It was late in the evening when it happened. Evelyn had just finished folding a basket of laundry and was heading down the hallway to place it in the guest room. The light from the old lamp cast long shadows against the walls, stretching and swaying with every step. She almost didn't notice Michael until she nearly bumped into him. He was standing there, leaning slightly against the wall, his face half hidden in the dim glow. Michael. Evelyn tilted her head, surprised to see him so still. "What are you doing here? Everyone else is in the living room." For a moment, he didn't answer. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes on the floor. When he finally looked up, Evelyn saw something in his expression that unsettled her. A seriousness, almost as if he had been waiting for her. He wasn't restless like usual. He wasn't grinning like a teenager caught sneaking snacks. He was quiet, steady, almost nervous. "Grandma," he said, his voice lower than she expected, "there's something I need to tell you." The words hung in the air, heavy, unusual. Evelyn felt her heart pause. She set the laundry basket down on the small wooden table by the wall, her eyes never leaving his. She could hear the faint sound of the television in the living room, muffled voices drifting through the walls. But here in the hallway, it was just the two of them, and his words had already built a small, unshakable world around them. She stepped closer, softening her tone. "You know, you can tell me anything, sweetheart." "What is it?" Michael hesitated, his gaze flicking away and then back to her, like someone preparing to leap into cold water. His jaw tightened, then relaxed, his breath shallow. He looked older in that moment, weighed down by something bigger than homework or school troubles. Evelyn suddenly felt the air shift, the way it did before a storm. Her mind raced through possibilities. Was he in trouble? Had something happened at school? Was he struggling in ways he hadn't told anyone? Evelyn's chest tightened, but she kept her face calm. She didn't want him to feel fear or judgment. She only wanted him to feel safe. The hallway light flickered slightly, and Evelyn's heart thudded in her chest. She could see his hands tremble just a little before he clenched them into fists in his pockets. He finally took a breath, his voice steady but filled with a quiet ache. I need you to hear me out. Please, Grandma. Don't tell anyone else yet. I'm not ready." Evelyn nodded slowly, her throat dry. "Of course. Whatever you say stays between us. You have my word." For a moment, Michael simply looked at her, his eyes searching, as though he was measuring whether he could really trust her with what he carried. And then Evelyn saw something in his expression that broke her heart and filled it at the same time. The vulnerability of a boy and the determination of a young man. He swallowed hard and whispered, "I don't think anyone really sees me. Not the way you do." The words struck her, soft but powerful, cutting through the silence of the house like wind through glass. Evelyn felt her breath hitch. Her grandson, the boy she thought she knew so well, was standing there stripped of pretense, asking her to understand him in a way no one else had. In that moment, Evelyn realized the weight of what he was about to share. This was not a casual conversation, not a fleeting teenage thought. It was something deeper, something that had been building inside him for a long time. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air denser, as though the house itself was listening. Evelyn placed her hand gently on his shoulder, her eyes steady on his. She could feel the warmth of his trembling beneath her touch, could sense the storm of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. She didn't speak yet. She knew the next words had to come from him. Michael's lips parted, then pressed together again. He let out a shaky breath and gave her a small, almost pleading look. "Grandma, I need to tell you something important. Something that might change how you see me." Her heart pounded, but she kept her face soft. "Nothing could change how much I love you." "Nothing," she whispered. Michael blinked, his throat working as though swallowing back both fear and relief. He leaned closer, lowering his voice even more, so faint she almost had to strain to hear. "It's just, I can't keep pretending. Not anymore." And with those words, Evelyn knew her life was about to change. Because his life was about to change, the hallway seemed to stretch into silence, time pausing between them. Evelyn's hands tightened slightly on his shoulder, her eyes searching his face, waiting for the words he had been holding back. Whatever came next, she understood it would not just be a confession. It would be a turning point. The laundry basket sat forgotten against the wall. The hum of the television seemed to vanish. All that mattered was her grandson's trembling voice, the fear and hope mixed in his expression, and the knowledge that the moment ahead would take her breath away. Evelyn stood still in that narrow hallway, her heart caught between fear and love. Michael's words from the night before circled in her mind like a restless echo. "I don't think anyone really sees me, not the way you do." She hadn't slept much, turning those words over in her thoughts. She had promised him she wouldn't tell anyone, and she meant it. But now she needed to hear the rest of what he wanted to say. The next evening, after the family had finished dinner, Evelyn noticed Michael slip away from the table sooner than usual. He moved quietly, almost as if trying not to draw attention. She followed him with her eyes until he disappeared down the same hallway where they'd spoken before. Something in her heart told her this was the moment he was waiting for. Setting down her napkin, Evelyn rose slowly and walked toward the hallway. When she reached him, Michael was leaning against the wall again, his head bowed. His hands were clasped together, fidgeting nervously. The sight pulled at her heartstrings. This was not the confident teenager everyone else thought they knew. This was a boy carrying something fragile inside. It's too heavy for his young shoulders. She approached gently, keeping her voice calm. "Michael, you asked me to listen. I'm here. You don't have to hold it all inside." He lifted his head, and she saw the struggle written all over his face. His eyes were damp, though he was trying hard to hide it. It feels like the world already has a plan for me. Mom and Dad talk about college, about business, about making something of myself. But every time they talk about my future, it feels like they're describing someone else. Not me." Evelyn listened carefully, her chest tightening with every word. He spoke with a mixture of frustration and pain, the kind of feelings he couldn't share at the dinner table. She took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. "What do you see when you think about your future?" she asked softly. Michael hesitated, his jaw tense. "I see music. I see myself on a stage, or even just in a small room, playing my guitar, writing songs. That's when I feel alive, Grandma. That's when I feel like I exist. But when I say that out loud, they tell me it's unrealistic. They say I'm too smart to waste my time. They don't understand that it's not wasting anything. It's the only thing that feels real to me." The confession spilled out of him in a rush, as though he had been holding it back for years. Evelyn felt her breath catch. She thought of the afternoons she had heard him strumming in his room, the melodies that floated through the air like whispers of his soul. She thought of how alive he had looked, unaware that anyone was listening. Now she understood why those moments had felt so powerful. They were glimpses of who he truly was. Michael's voice broke slightly as he continued. "I know I'm not supposed to say this, but sometimes I feel invisible. At school, at home. I smile, I nod, I do what's expected. But inside, I feel like I'm fading away. Except here. With you. You notice things nobody else does. You see me? That's why I had to tell you." Evelyn swallowed hard, tears stinging her eyes. She reached for his hand and held it firmly. His palm was clammy, trembling slightly, but he didn't pull away. She squeezed it gently, grounding him in the silence of the hall. "My sweet boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You are not invisible. You've never been invisible to me. I've seen your light since the day you were born. And if music is what makes that light shine, then you must never be ashamed of it." Michael blinked as though her words carried more weight than he had expected. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked away for a moment, his eyes glistening, then looked back at her with something like relief, something like hope. "I was so scared you'd tell me to stop dreaming," he said quietly, "that you'd say the same things everyone else does." Evelyn shook her head. "Dreams are not foolish. They are the truest part of us. The only mistake is ignoring them." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The house around them was alive with distant laughter from the living room, the clinking of dishes being washed in the kitchen. But here in the hallway there was only silence, a silence filled with trust, love, and a truth that had finally found its voice. Michael let out a shaky laugh, almost embarrassed by the weight of his emotions. "I didn't think I'd ever say this out loud, but with you it feels different. Safe." Evelyn smiled through the tears that now blurred her vision. "That's because you are safe with me always." She brushed a strand of hair off his forehead, just like she used to when he was a boy. For the first time that evening, Michael smiled, not the polite smile he used in front of others, but a real one, full of relief and honesty. But beneath that smile was still a quiet question. She could feel it hanging in the air, waiting to be spoken. He had told her his secret, yes, but there was something else behind his eyes. Something deeper he hadn't yet revealed. "Grandma," he said softly, almost as if testing the strength of his own voice, "there's more I need to tell you. Something that might change everything." Evelyn's heart skipped, but she kept her expression calm, inviting. "Then tell me, Michael. Whatever it is, I can take it. I'm here for you." He took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around hers, his gaze locked onto her face. She could see the courage building inside him, pushing against the fear. The hallway seemed to shrink, the walls pressing closer, the air heavier. Time itself felt suspended as he opened his mouth to speak. And then, with a voice both fragile and fierce, he whispered, "I don't just want to play music, Grandma. I want to live a life that feels like mine, even if no one else understands it." Evelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. She realized in that instant that this was not just about music. This was about identity, about freedom, about the kind of life he wanted to carve out for himself. She felt her pulse race, her mind whirling. He was asking her for something no one else had given him. Permission to be exactly who he was. And though she knew the rest of the family might not understand, Evelyn also knew in her heart that she could not let him stand alone. Evelyn could still feel the warmth of Michael's hand in hers as his words echoed in her mind. "I want to live a life that feels like mine." That sentence hung in the air like a fragile lantern, glowing but trembling in the shadows of doubt. She looked at him, and for the first time, she saw not just a grandson, but a young man standing on the edge of his own life, desperate to step forward, but afraid of the ground giving way beneath him. Michael's chest rose and fell quickly. His eyes darted between her face and the floor as though he feared rejection was waiting in her silence. Evelyn steadied her breath and placed her other hand gently over his. "Michael," she whispered, "that's one of the bravest things I've ever heard you say." He let out a shaky breath, but instead of relief, his expression darkened. "You don't understand, Grandma. If I choose the life I want, I'll let everyone else down. Mom, Dad, even my friends. They all expect me to follow a certain path. If I break away, I'll disappoint them. I'll ruin everything they've planned for me." Evelyn shook her head firmly, her voice stronger now. "That's not true. Living honestly doesn't ruin things, Michael. It may upset people for a while, but lies ruin more in the end. Pretending to be someone you're not, that's what destroys people." He stared at her, his lips trembling, as if the words cut open a truth he had avoided for too long. But what if I fail? What if I chase music or whatever makes me happy and it all falls apart? Then I'll have nothing. The desperation in his voice pierced Evelyn's heart. She saw herself in him, the same fear she had once felt when she was his age. She remembered the choices she didn't take, the dreams she folded away to be what others wanted. She had built a life, yes, but in the quiet corners of her soul. She still wondered about the paths she never walked. She reached out and gently lifted his chin so he would meet her eyes. Michael, listen to me. Failure is not the end. It's proof that you tried. The only true failure is living someone else's life and realizing too late that you never lived your own. Tears welled up in his eyes and he swallowed hard. I was so scared to tell you this, he admitted. I thought you'd think I was selfish or foolish. Her lips curved into a tender smile. Selfish? No, my dear. Wanting to be true to yourself is the opposite of selfish. It's the gift you give to the world. Because when you live as who you really are, your light shines. And the world needs that light. For a long moment, silence settled again. But this time, it was not heavy. It was filled with something new, understanding. Evelyn could see the relief in his posture, the way his shoulders dropped, the way his eyes softened. He had carried this burden for so long, and now it had a place to rest. But Michael wasn't finished. He hesitated, his lips pressing together as though holding back something deeper. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. There's something else I need to say. Something I've never told anyone. If I don't say it now, I don't think I ever will. Evelyn's heart quickened. She could sense the storm building beneath his calm surface. She squeezed his hand, steadying him. You can tell me anything, Michael. Nothing you say will make me stop loving you. His eyes shone, and for a second, he looked younger. Almost like the little boy who used to run to her for comfort after scraping his knee. But his words were no child's confession. Sometimes I feel like I'm two different people. There's the Michael everyone sees, polite, responsible, doing what's expected. And then there's the real me, the one who writes songs at night, who dreams of something bigger, who wants love and freedom and meaning. But I'm scared no one will ever accept that real me. Evelyn's breath caught. His vulnerability was like an open wound, and it demanded nothing but truth in return. She pulled him into a soft embrace, pressing his head against her shoulder. His body shook against hers, not from sobs, but from the release of years of silence. She whispered into his hair, I see both sides of you, Michael, and I love them both. You don't need to hide the real you from me or from the world. The world might not always understand right away, but if you stay true, the right people will see you. The right people will love you for it. He clung to her, the hallway suddenly too small to hold the weight of their bond. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a vow, unspoken but powerful. A promise that whatever battles he faced, he wouldn't have to face them alone. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clearer than before. You really believe I can do it? That I can live the life I want? Evelyn cupped his face with both hands. I don't just believe it. I know it. You are stronger than you think, and I will stand beside you every step of the way. Michael inhaled deeply, as though her words filled his lungs with air he hadn't breathed in years. He nodded slowly, a small but determined smile tugging at his lips. Thank you, Grandma. You have no idea how much this means to me. Her heart swelled with pride and love. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for him. There would be arguments, doubts, maybe even heartbreak. But in this moment she also knew he had taken the first step toward his true life, and she had been there to witness it still. Beneath the relief, Evelyn felt a flicker of unease. He had spoken bravely, but she sensed there was still one more truth he was holding back. Something heavier, something that lingered in the way his eyes sometimes drifted away from hers, in the way his breath caught before his sentences, and she knew the next time he stopped her in the hall, she would finally hear it. The house was quiet that evening, the kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. Evelyn sat in her favorite chair by the hallway, the lamp beside her casting a warm glow on the pages of a book she wasn't really reading. Her mind was still replaying the conversation with Michael from the day before. His words had left her shaken, not because she doubted him, but because she knew the journey he was about to begin would test every part of his heart. As she turned another page, she heard footsteps, slow, hesitant, as if each one weighed 1,000 pounds. She looked up to see Michael standing in the doorway, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his face pale but determined. He looked like a man who had made a decision but wasn't sure how the world would take it. "Grandma," he said softly, his voice carrying both fear and courage, "can we talk again?" Evelyn closed her book and patted the chair beside her. "Of course, sweetheart. Sit." He didn't sit right away. Instead, he lingered in the hallway, his shoulders tense. "This time, it's different," he whispered. "What I need to tell you, it might change the way you see me." Her heart tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "Nothing you say will change the love I have for you, Michael. That's a promise." He finally sank into the chair, his hands trembling slightly. He stared at the carpet as though searching for the right words. The silence stretched, but Evelyn didn't rush him. She knew some truths needed space to rise on their own. At last he lifted his eyes to hers. "Grandma, I've been hiding something. Not just from Mom and Dad, but from everyone. I'm tired of pretending. I don't want to be trapped in this mask anymore." Evelyn's breath caught, but she nodded for him to continue. "I don't want to live the life that's been written for me," he said, his voice breaking. "I want to choose my own path, Evan, if people don't understand, even if they judge me." His hands clenched together, his knuckles white. "Grandma, the truth is, I'm not the person everyone thinks I am. I've been carrying this secret for so long, and it's tearing me apart." Her heart pounded in her chest. She could see the fear in his eyes, the way he braced himself for rejection. She reached over and placed her hand gently on his. "Michael," she whispered, "whatever it is, you don't need to be afraid. Just say it." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling but steadying with each word. "I'm not like everyone expects me to be. I don't want to follow the plans they've laid out. I want to live honestly, to be true to myself, to love who I love, to create, to be free, and I'm terrified people won't accept me for that." Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. She could hear the weight of years in his voice, the pain of hiding. She squeezed his hand firmly. "Michael," she said softly, "you just gave me the greatest gift. You trusted me with your truth. And I accept every part of you. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to say it out loud." For the first time that night, his shoulders loosened. His eyes brimmed with tears, but now they glowed with relief. "You really mean that?" "I do," she said firmly. "I've lived a long life, Michael, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that love and honesty matter more than any expectation. The world might not always understand, but I do. And I'll stand with you through it all." The tears spilled down his cheeks then, but they were tears of release, not fear. He leaned into her, wrapping his arms around her like he had when he was a boy. Evelyn held him tightly, her own tears sliding down her face. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," she whispered. "Your truth doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger. And anyone who truly loves you will see that." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in silence, the kind of silence that heals. When Michael finally pulled back, his face looked different, lighter, freer. The haunted look that had shadowed his eyes was gone. "Thank you, Grandma," he said softly. "You don't know what this means to me." "Oh, I think I do," she replied, her smile gentle. "Because once, a long time ago, I wished I had been brave enough to say the same kinds of things. I stayed quiet and I lived with regret. But you, Michael, you won't have to. You've already begun your true life tonight." His lips curved into a faint but determined smile. "Then I'll keep going. I don't know where this road will lead, but I know I can't go back to hiding." Evelyn nodded, pride swelling in her chest. "And no matter where it leads, you won't walk it alone. You have me, always." As the clock ticked quietly on the wall, Evelyn realized something profound. The boy who had once stopped her in the hall with scraped knees and simple questions had now stopped her with truths that shook the foundation of their family. And yet, in that shaking, something new had been built. Trust, honesty, freedom. Michael stood to leave. But before he stepped away, he paused. "Grandma." "Yes, dear." He smiled faintly. "You really took my breath away tonight." Evelyn's heart warmed. She watched him walk down the hall, his steps lighter than they had been in years. She knew challenges awaited him. Some people might not understand. Some might even turn away. But he had spoken his truth. And that truth had set him free. And as she sat there in the soft glow of the lamp, Evelyn whispered to herself, "He's going to be just fine."